All right, we're going to go over the operation of the economy capsule shrinker controls. This is going to be the main screen when you power up the machine. There's an alarm bar at the bottom. Any active alarms will be displayed here at the bottom. The reset alarm button here will allow you to clear any alarms that don't self-clear. Most of them will self-clear once you solve the issue causing the alarm. Over on the left-hand side here are your master switches. The top cycle button is going to be where you're going to start and stop the cycles for automatic operation. The heater dive is going to be the master switch to turn off the actual dive function for the heater to dive over the containers. And the conveyor button will be the master switch for the conveyor. So this will just turn conveyor operation completely off or allow it to operate however you have it set up, whether that's automatic or continuous mode. In the center here, you got in-feed container count. This is going to be the amount of containers that are going to be counted while in cycle, and it'll reset after every cycle. Containers per minute. This will display how many containers per minute you're running on the last finished cycle. Up at the top, you have setup button. This is going to access any of the machine setup functions that you want to utilize. Manual will be any manual operations that you need for manually toggling anything for setup or diagnostics. Timers is going to be any related timers for the automatic operation of the machine, and recipes will be where you would save your recipes at. So if we start at the setup tab, if I click setup tab, it's going to bring me to this screen where I can select the indexing type that I have by clicking on this. This will give me the option to cycle through pin, star wheel, or off. With off, if I hit the cycle start, it's just going to simply dive down in place with no indexing at all. Pin indexing will be if I have entry and exit pins. Star wheel will be if I have a star wheel. Standard is pin indexing, so that's how we'll have this one set up. The locate is going to be the locator that will come out and push the container into place and hold it so that the heat shrinker can dive down around it in the same place every time. You have the option to turn that auto or off here as well, but just by clicking on it. Standard operation will have that turned on into the auto state. Also on this screen, you can click the main toggle button. That'll take you back to the main screen we're just on. You'll have the ASU button, which will allow you to run an automatic setup for the pin indexing. There's a video on how to do that as well. You have the I/O screen, which will show you the inputs and outputs, and the login screen, which is for manufacturer setup. There's also under the login screen a selection to delete all the recipes if you want to start from fresh. If I click main, I'll come back to my main. We'll go back into that setup tab again. And if we go to this ASU, this is where you would follow the instructions for the ASU. Essentially, you're going to set how many containers you have, which is going to be, we're running one in this setup, which is set up under the timers tab. It just displays it here for you. I'm going to push containers up against my entry pin once I have all my mechanical adjustments made. Once I have enough pins or enough containers up against my entry pin to fill the shrinking zone, which is standard is 1, then I'll have a couple containers prior to that, and I will hit the start ASU index. It'll pull the entry pin back and turn my conveyor on and move the container forward. And then the entry pin will extend and the conveyor will shut off, and then it'll display a time under my duration if all looked good, and then I'll hit the save index ASU button, and then I'm good to go. Now at the top, I can push the setup button, and that'll take me right back to the previous screen where I can select the I/O screen to see any of the I/O like we discussed, or I can move into the login screen, which we already went over. So from here, I'm going to go back to the main screen, and then I'll go over to the manual toggle screen. This is going to show any of the options that I can manually toggle, and if I wanted to say turn my conveyor from start and stop to just run continuously, I can select this. This is the only toggle that does not reset when I leave this page. If I do my entry pin, I can click that and it'll just open that, which will retract the pin into its housing. And then once I leave this page, this will reset along with the rest of these. So these are just for setup and diagnostics. If I go back to the main screen again, I can move to my timer screen, and this is where we're going to set up any of the timers for the operation of the machine. The entry delay time is going to be what sets the gap between the container leaving the shrinking zone and the new container coming into the zone. The in-feed count is going to be how many containers we're pulling in to actually shrink. Typically, this is 1. Count sensor on delay is going to be how long the count sensor has to be seeing the last bottle before it moves on with the process. Exit gate duration. This is what's going to be set during the indexing ASU. This is how long it takes for the bottle to move from the entry pin to the exit pin. The heater dive delay will be once the container is indexed into the shrink zone, how long do we wait before we dive down, just to make sure everything's in place. The heater shrink duration will be how long does the heater sit around the capsule to shrink around the container. If I hit next, it'll take me to my next set, where I have exit retract delay and new cycle. So this will be after the heater is finished and it goes to retract. How long do we wait before we open the exit pin? This will essentially give us a buffer so that our container doesn't get stuck inside the heat shrinker before it's trying to leave. So if we have a really long neck on our bottle with a long capsule and we're diving really far onto the container, if we try to retract up really slowly with the heater and then we open the exit pin, the container is just going to fall over. So we can add a little bit of time here to accommodate that. The backup on delay is just going to be how long does the line backup sensor have to be blocked before it will hold anything from indexing out of the shrinker. The cycle reset delay is going to be after everything is finished and we're getting ready to discharge the shrunken capsule on the container and everything. How long do we wait before we do that? So if you have a slower process down the line, like your hand packing containers, you can add a little time here to slow this machine down. Now we go back to the main screen. The next screen is going to be the recipe screen. So once I have everything set up and running the way that I like it, I can come to the recipe screen here and I can save this and I can load this recipe for later use. However I want to go about that, I have 10 options. I can select whatever number I would like here. So if I want to select recipe 1 and I want to save this, I can just hit this save for use later, and this will save this. So then if I later in the day I make a bunch of changes and I want to come back to this same container, I can come back and I can select recipe 1 and then I can just hit load for use now.